In the beginning, there were no humans. God, the creator of all things, decided to make mankind in his own image. From the dust of the ground, he formed Adam, the first man. God breathed life into Adam, and he became a living being. But God saw that it was not good for man to be alone. So while Adam slept, God took one of his ribs and created Eve, the first woman. She was presented to Adam as his companion and helper. Together, they were to be stewards of God's creation, living in harmony with nature and each other. Adam and Eve were innocent and pure, living in a state of grace. They were naked and unashamed, their relationship a reflection of the divine love that had brought them into being. Their lives were simple, filled with the joy of discovery and the wonder of their newfound existence. God placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, a paradise of unimaginable beauty. Lush trees bore delicious fruits, crystal clear rivers flowed through verdant meadows, and the air was filled with the sweet songs of birds. It was a place of abundance, where all their needs were met, and life was free from pain and suffering. God gave Adam and Eve dominion over all living creatures. They named the animals and lived in harmony with them. Their days were spent exploring their surroundings, tending to the garden, and enjoying each other's company. It was a time of perfect peace and contentment. At the center of the garden stood two remarkable trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God allowed Adam and Eve to eat freely from any tree in the garden except for the tree of knowledge. He warned them that eating from this tree would have dire consequences. One day, as Eve walked through the garden, she encountered a serpent. The serpent, known for its cunning, began to question Eve about God's command regarding the forbidden fruit. "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. Eve, taken aback by the serpent's words, replied, "We may eat the fruit of any tree in the garden, except the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden. God has said, you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die." The serpent, however, contradicted God's words, assuring Eve that she would not die. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil," the serpent whispered seductively. Tempted by the promise of knowledge and power, Eve succumbed to the serpent's deception. She looked at the fruit, so enticing and desirable, and took a bite. Eve, feeling a surge of newfound awareness, shared the fruit with Adam, who also ate it. Immediately their eyes were opened, and they became aware of their nakedness. Shame washed over them, and they hastily fashioned clothes from fig leaves. When God came to the garden, he knew what they had done. He confronted them, and Adam blamed Eve, who in turn blamed the serpent. God, in his infinite wisdom, pronounced judgment on each of them. The serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly and live in enmity with humans. Eve was cursed with pain in childbirth and subordination to her husband. Adam was cursed with toil and hardship in his labor. The ground was cursed for their sake, making it difficult to cultivate. Paradise was lost. God banished Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, placing cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Outside the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve faced a harsh and unforgiving world. They had to toil for their food, and life was filled with challenges. Despite the hardships, they found solace in each other and had children. Their firstborn son was Cain, followed by Abel. Cain became a farmer, while Abel became a shepherd. One day, both brothers offered sacrifices to God. Abel, with a pure heart, offered the firstborn of his flock. Cain, however, offered a portion of his harvest, which didn't please God. Consumed by jealousy and anger, Cain murdered his brother Abel. God confronted Cain, asking, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain, trying to hide his sin, retorted, "Am I my brother's keeper?" But God knew the truth and cursed Cain for his wicked deed. Cain was forced to wander the earth, forever marked by his crime. Despite the tragedy of Abel's death, Adam and Eve had other children, and humanity continued. One son, Seth, was born to them in their old age. Seth was a righteous man, and his birth was seen as a sign of God's continued favor. The descendants of Seth carried on the worship of the one true God, while the descendants of Cain strayed from righteousness. As generations passed, the world became increasingly corrupt. filled with violence and wickedness. The line of Seth, however, remained a beacon of hope, preserving the memory of God's original plan for humanity. It is through this lineage that the promise of redemption would eventually be fulfilled. Generations passed, and the descendants of Adam and Eve multiplied and spread across the earth. Some remained faithful to God, while others turned away. The Bible recounts the stories of these early generations, highlighting both the righteous and the wicked. We learn of Enoch, who walked with God and was taken up to heaven. We hear of Lamech, a descendant of Cain, who boasted of his violence. The world became increasingly corrupt and humanity drifted further away from God's original intention. The wickedness of humanity grieved God, and he decided to send a great flood to cleanse the earth. However, one righteous man, Noah, found favor in God's eyes. The story of Adam and Eve is a foundational narrative in many cultures and religions. It explores themes of creation, temptation, sin, and the consequences of disobedience. It introduces the concept of original sin, the idea that all humans inherit the consequences of Adam and Eve's actions. The story also highlights the importance of free will and the power of choice. Adam and Eve were given free will but chose to disobey God's command. This act of disobedience had far-reaching consequences, not only for themselves but for all of humanity. Despite the fall, the story of Adam and Eve also offers a message of hope. God, in his mercy, did not abandon humanity. He promised a redeemer, one who would ultimately overcome the power of sin and death. The story of Adam and Eve continues to resonate with people today. It speaks to the human condition, our capacity for both good and evil, our longing for paradise, and our search for meaning and purpose. It reminds us that our choices have consequences, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. The story also encourages us to reflect on our relationship with God, with each other, and with the natural world. It challenges us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and responsibility, striving to create a better world for ourselves and for generations to come. The tale of Adam and Eve, though ancient, remains a timeless and powerful story that continues to shape our understanding of ourselves, our world, and our place in the grand tapestry of creation.